Anti versus true, the difference between the Antichrist and the Messiah. You know, I, I, I honestly don't think we can spend enough time or too much time on analyzing the idea of who is the Messiah and just revisiting this theme as often as we possibly can. Just to be sure, is everyone seeing you're seeing the logo for this teaching, right? It is sharing properly.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So, when I looked into this, I've had conversations with a couple of people over the last few weeks. And one of the things that came up is the discussion about there's just a sense of heaviness. There's a sense of absolute insanity over the planet in various ways. And now, obviously, we're going to be careful because things have always been crazy. It's not like it's not been crazy and suddenly it is. But even still, the kinds of things that are becoming normative and getting pushed for, it really is just getting silly. It makes no sense, and it's obviously getting worse. And obviously, you think of the corona pandemic and all of that. You do get, I get the feeling, and I get the sense sometimes that there's just a greater heaviness, and I think what I'm feeling, and I don't know if any of you have felt it of late, and I'm not saying that corona isn't a big part of this too, but there's almost a sense of hopelessness. And I don't mean in every sense of the word, but I just mean in the sense of you look at the world around you. I don't want to listen to the news almost. And I've run out of energy or interest to even comment on what's happening in some senses. There's a tiredness in all kinds of ways that you start feeling. But then I start thinking about some of what gets said by the prophets, what gets said in Revelation specifically, that men's hearts will fail them for what's coming on the earth. And you realize that if these crazy things and this acceleration of hopelessness or evil or just the big mess up that we can hardly even process and deal with what's happening around us, if that's going to really start happening, it has to have a psychological effect even on believers. And now I then think to Paul, and Paul's encouraging the believers to take heart, encouraging the believers to spur one another on. He talks about people that are going to fall away, that people are going to give up, that it's going to get too tough. And I'm starting to think that some of what I've been experiencing and seeing around me is evidence of that thing that Paul was trying to encourage everyone with. And again, we're not talking about like a few years or a few months back, everything was fine and there was no evil prevalent in on planet Earth, and now suddenly there is. I'm not assuming that things haven't always been relatively bad, but is it getting worse in some ways? And if in which ways is it getting worse? Those are the things that I think I am seeing. And of course, with the kind of study and research I do, I can point out to you some of the areas, and they're deeply disturbing. For example, um, alien interaction, alien abduction, alien people waiting for it. I put on the group the other day that documentary Pierre and I watched is called what is it? Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Now, the four Close Encounters of the first four kinds have their progressive nature, but they were always from aliens to us. That was the theory, at least, or not aliens necessarily, UFOs or whatever. But in this case, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind is actually human beings reaching out. And if you have to see what's being done in the interest of that, it will turn your stomach. And not only that, if you have to see how it's working, and the stories coming out of it, that's what's also deeply disturbing. So it's things like that. Then there's the transhumanism. There's the um, which is getting pushed immensely, and there's more and more talk of it being done somewhat reasonably successfully. Uh, gene splicing, which is again the idea of mixing uh, genes and DNA of different species with each other. And again, not just that this is being thought of, that this is being done, and not only being done with success too. And I guess part of the disturbing reality of it, it's losing its um, immoral label, if I can put it that way. These things are becoming more normative. Now, I guess maybe Nande, maybe, I guess, I don't know if any of you or have picked up any of this information or seen anything. Maybe Nande more, because I talked to him about it, and he's would have heard me and Pierre go on about it. Does any of this sound familiar to the rest of you? Do you, or is it, are you only really hearing about it anytime I'd maybe speak about it through RBS? I don't know. I just want to hear what you guys think of that. Is this, you picked up hints of this anyway, or is it only being exposed to you through when I bring it up on RBS?
Um, Sometimes from one particular person, she's always talking about conspiracy
Okay,
theories. That's about the closest.
okay.
And I just take her off when she starts on that because she's uh, she she used to be um, leader of our Christian dance group,
Oh
and I
wow.
think she's gone off her head a bit.
You see, that is the thing, Catherine, more ways than one, because here's the thing. Some of those theories can be absolutely ludicrously insane, that and unsubstantiated. But on the other hand, some of them aren't. Some of them are actually valid. And then the problem with that becomes, it's it can be mentally straining. It can be mentally disturbing, um, to probe too much into it and to go too far into it. So it's a very dangerous space to get into. However, and I mean, obviously, we're not classifying. I can't classify right now how much of it is crazy and how much of it is to go too far, or where you're going too far and where it's dangerous. But here's the bottom line, though. For people like us, followers of Jesus, we have a responsibility to uphold truth, to expose lies, to bring light to darkness. And that means then, to some extent, and again, this is unclassified or substantiated, meaning I'm not categorizing perfectly the statement I'm about to make, but to some extent, we need to try and engage those people, or, if we're not engaging them, when they engage us, we're going to need to have some sort of an answer, or be able to meet them somewhere. And again, I know that when people get into that and get lost in that, you could almost say that they've off the reserve, and you're going to, when you lose them into that, there's not a good chance that you get them out of that again. So I don't know where this person is that you're mentioning is on that track, but I know those kinds of people. Let me say that to you, and that can, of course, get dangerous and cause a lot of trouble. So, and that's why it's not surprising to me if this person you're mentioning is literally losing the plot through it, because the nature of the content that it covers is dismally dark and disturbing, unsettling. Those are the right words to use for it. But like I say, in the midst of it, obviously there's some things that are absolutely insane. In the midst of that, there are truths. And the crazy part is, just on the one topic, which happens to be aliens, obviously now meaning there's intelligent life besides us in on other planets. Now, we're obviously not talking about supernatural, we're talking now about on other planets. Governments around the world in the last few years have started disclosing information where they've seen UFOs, where they've engaged them. Now, remember, it's important to note that when I say UFOs, I mean unidentified flying objects, which they confirm is not of human origin, but they're not also classifying like it's little green men sitting in a spacecraft either. So it's calling a UFO is the most responsible way to identify it. You're not actually classifying it beyond um, what human science and technology is able to measure. So that is the most responsible way to deal with it. So
What's scary is,
yes,
sorry, what's
yes,
scary is we're told even the very elect will be deceived.
right, and that's the thing, Kathy, and this is why I'm saying we don't need to become experts on every alien theory or every alien activity idea and what, because there's just too much of it out there in any case to start with. But we cannot at the same time, unfortunately, afford not to have a position, if that makes sense. And the reason why we can't afford not to have a position is because we claim to have the truth. And if we've got the truth, we must be ready to present that truth in a way that can show an alternative to be false. And you can't do that when someone comes up to you and says, how do you explain these things that people are seeing in the sky and that and what? You can't just say you don't believe in it, because the reality is it's happening. These things are really happening. The source of it is obviously up for debate, and that's my point. That we've got to be able to have an answer on. Um, I've started recently with I've got it on Facebook now and a WhatsApp group called Myth is Real. Because what I've realized is people want to talk about ghosts, they want to talk about aliens, they want to talk about Bigfoot, they want to talk about all of those things. Now I can do one choice where I just refuse to talk about any of that stuff and lose the potential opportunity to minister to these people. Or I can meet them where they're at and teach them responsible, investigative, scientific methodologies of determining what's real and what's not real. I don't know if that makes sense. Um, and now, obviously, there's probably overlap between the two groups in terms of memberships. But on the WhatsApp group right now, if I'm not mistaken, there's about 60 people already. And on the Facebook group, there's 50, which is fair numbers. And that's an audience. And so I've been praying a lot about that and just trying to find a way to strike that balance to say, let's talk about the strange things, but also to be able to direct those conversations in the long run towards what is true, to what is scriptural, to what's based on that. And I'm just hoping and praying and trusting, that the Spirit can use that. Because the reality is, and yes, actually the point of this session tonight is that we are in a war and there are things going on around us. And like the tagline of Myth is Real says, I say there in the tagline of that, I say, make sense of the strange, because that's what we have to do. And I think we can't afford for our worldviews to be too small, that it can't accept very strange things being part of the reality we live in. And so, yeah, tying all of that into the theme for tonight, because it is part of the theme for tonight. So let me try and get us into that space. The Messiah or the Christ, and the Antichrist or the anti-Messiah. Like I put on, I don't know if you have all read the little intro I put maybe like 40 minutes to an hour ago on the WhatsApp group about this. We have to know what it is we stand for. And I do believe that we've done a reasonably good job on RBS over the years. The courage of everyone that's come, stayed for a while, and even more the courage of you people who stay still. I believe that we are doing a fairly decent job, responsible job of studying properly, respectfully, categorizing, cataloging, systematically approaching what is truth and what does it look like and how does it operate. I think we're doing that. And tonight is the session is another one of those opportunities where I'm saying We love Jesus. We want to know him more. We don't know him perfectly. We can only get to know him as much as the Spirit allows us to. So that's our goal. That should be the goal of every believer, in fact. So we're not unique in that way. But then I was, as I say, thinking about these strange events and these strange things and what we know should be coming in the world into the future. And I thought, well, let's look at this idea of the Messiah. We've looked at it in many ways. We've looked at it through the Moedim, and we'll do that again. And we do it systematically every Moed that comes up. And that's right. That's the right thing to do. But I'm very keen to see, and I'm really keen to get everyone's thoughts here now when we get launched into this properly now, on how does this angle look? Because this is an interesting angle for us to consider. People talk about the Antichrist. It's obviously mentioned in Scripture. So what do we need to know? How do we get to know about it? So I'm keen to get your thoughts on this angle, and if this angle works, then I would want to develop further into the future. And it's something that we could all use, because again, as I said, it's all of our responsibilities equally to promote the gospel. And my favorite statement is that the gospel is more than the cross, not at the expense of the cross, but it is more than just the cross. And tonight's one of those nights again. We're understanding the Messiah from this angle, understanding the Messiah by understanding what the Messiah is not, kind of effect, is also part of that. And so I hope to bring something new to the table for tonight. So please, let's get back into the swing of our Sabbath sessions with rigorous discussion and question and answers on this. So let's start with this one. First mention of Messiah. If you all know it. So who wants to tell us what's the obvious first scriptural mention of Messiah?
Darren, was that when the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent? Is that it?
The Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all cattle and above all wild animals. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel."
Oh, there we go. So Kathy, that was probably 14 and 15 now.
Yes, it was.
Okay, thanks. So there we go. So it was 15 that actually
I will put enmity between you. Yeah.
mentions that first. And that's, Christianity rightly celebrates that verse as it should, because that is a very powerful statement. So here's the next question then, because we know that one well. Here's a question you've probably never been asked. What's the first mention of the anti-Messiah? And I think this is a good one. This is a good one for when we are discussing this with other people and when we're educating ourselves and encouraging one another. I think this is a good tactical question to use in getting this conversation going. It's not difficult, and you do actually know the answer. So if someone wants to get it, because you probably saw it already, Genesis 10 verse 8.
Yeah. It says Cush became the father of Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man.
There we go.
He was a mighty hunter before the Lord.
Right. So there you get the first mention of let's call him the first prototype of the seed of the serpent, the
How do you know that?
anti-Messiah. So the word there for him being a mighty man is if you go, Kathy, quickly go for us now, jump back to Genesis 6 verse 4.
Right. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown.
See that? Did you see the connection?
Yeah.